A lot of people suffer from the problem of overgiving to the people that they are in relationship to. And you might think that this is a very selfless strategy, right? This is a very selfless act, when in actuality, this is actually very selfish. It's unhealthy selflessness and a lack of an ability to be selfish in a healthy way. Because on the surface, it looks like, if you give and you give and you give and you're just overgiving, right? This is just like some great thing. But it actually leaves the individual doing that behavior exhausted, drained, and really out of alignment with themselves. They can't really listen to their own needs. And in fact, the reason why people continuously do this is because deep down, they're actually afraid of certain things. Right? So this is not a selfless way of being in the world. This is actually selfish, but it's disguised as selfless. Right? It's actually just a way that your ego gets what it needs. Right? This is a strategy for getting what it needs. So if this is you, and to be quite honest, everyone suffers from this problem to varying degrees, right? Some people not very much, but at one point you've most likely done this, where you overgive to a kind of situation, a person, right? It doesn't have to be limited to just a relationship, to any kind of situation where you just give and you give and you give and give too much to the point where it's just exhausting, and deep down you actually know this is dysfunctional. Right? So if this is you and you want to stop, of course you're in the right place. The whole point of this video is to get you to realize the pattern, the underlying mechanics of it, and then how to actually stop. Right? So right off the bat, you have to identify where your needs are being met by this whole situation. Right? So basically identify what you actually want from the situation, which is most likely a form of love, approval, right? A feeling of wholeness. And why don't you feel that already? Why isn't this like your default way of being? Mainly because there's certain wounded parts of you that never got their needs met, typically early on in childhood. It's forms of emotional neglect, a lack of attunement, of course, a lack of spiritual development, a lack of psychological development. These are all a bunch of various factors. So you actually project your unmet needs from childhood out there onto other people and situations and circumstances. But for the remainder of this video, I'm going to be just focusing specifically on people. Right? So you project your unmet needs onto that person you want to be in a relationship with, or the person you are in relationship with, right? Whether it's intimate or even just friends and wanting forms of approval, things like this, right? So the love, the emotional connection and approval, basically from mommy and daddy that you never really got, you project that onto others, and you don't really know that you're even doing this because you don't have another kind of experience. You don't have a contrasting experience to compare your current one to. You don't have a different level and state of consciousness to be comparing your current one to. So it just kind of seems like this is what relationships are. This is kind of just what reality is. This is how it works, when it really isn't. And you'll actually continue to attract and be attracted to people and circumstances that reflect your own subconscious patterns, because that equals safety, the familiarity, and comfort zone as well. It kind of reflects the known, right? The norm. Basically, it feels safe and you feel comfortable in that pattern, even if it's dysfunctional, right? And this, you can see this exact thing playing out in a bunch of different areas of life, of people stuck in dysfunctional patterns because they feel safe in it. They feel like they're getting love from it. They feel like they're getting some kind of unmet need met by doing some sort of dysfunctional thing, right? Whether that's eating a bunch of junk food, watching a bunch of TV, even going to a job they hate, staying in relationships that don't work, etc. Until you actually heal these inner child wounds and these patterns, they basically repeat themselves, right? Kind of like a record player goes around in circles and circles and circles. But the thing is that your mind is very sneaky and self-deceptive and quite tricky. So it doesn't come up and say like, oh, I'm repeating myself and going in circles and circles and circles. No, it just does it without your conscious awareness, because it's subconsciously programmed into you, and it requires conscious and mindful attention to really begin to notice these things. So these patterns just unconsciously basically repeat themselves, and they're unconsciously designed to actually manipulate other people in order to get what you want. That's really what's going on here, right? You're over giving and giving and giving because you actually want stuff in return. And it's like this subtle sort of dishonesty as well. You're not fully grounded in yourself. You're not really speaking your needs clearly, in times where they probably should be spoken clearly. And you can actually just notice this pattern having a sort of manipulative effect on people as well. Right? So this is the exact opposite of alignment and surrender, which creates a lot of suffering in your life. It's basically you trying to get certain things in these sort of sneaky strategies without really noticing it. And of course, it actually ends up being a manipulation. And there's nothing really like horrible about the word manipulation here. You don't got to take it like too in like an overly moral sense. Like it really is okay. You kind of just want to notice it and start like cleaning it up, right? You can really be very gentle with yourself if this is you, right? It most likely is. Right, so I want to give you some examples of this, right? So people pleasing in order to try and gain approval, right? You're trying to like gain the other person's approval, elicit some sort of like mental emotional response by people pleasing, right? You're trying to like change them to be a way that you want them to be so that they give you things that you want, right? In this people pleasing sort of fashion, right? By people pleasing, right? Even just overextending yourself in order to receive some form of love. Right, that's another one. Choosing people who don't choose you in order to prove that you are worthy, right? This is another example of this, of like kind of overgiving to something that's not really giving back to you and ends up being really dysfunctional. Next is trying to be Superman, right, quote unquote Superman, and fix everyone's problems, and it never actually works, right? Thinking that you need to be responsible for like the suffering of absolutely everyone. You got to go in there, you got to fix them, fix all their problems, and it just, of course, never actually works. Sometimes letting go is better for you and the other person, right? You not always playing Superman allows people to actually solve their own problems and develop for themselves, right? It allows them to actually learn things that are actually extremely valuable for them, right? So sometimes you think that you're actually helping people by just being freaking Superman and basically overgiving, but you're actually just keeping them stuck in a broken pattern, a broken system, and you're involved in that pattern. And it's basically completely exhausting to always be overextending. It's actually a burden on your own emotional and mental system. It's a drain on your energy. And once you build up this pattern of always overgiving, and you don't really know rest, you don't really know just kind of being in your own body, just resting in your own being. Right? Something about resting your own being can feel very unnatural because you're so used and you're so conditioned to do all these sort of dysfunctional things that the moment something natural comes your way, it's like, ew, what is this? Because you've trained your mind to be so unnatural. It's like if you've ate nothing but like a bunch of fast food for your entire life and you try just a raw piece of broccoli, right? It's like one is so flavorful, and a raw piece of broccoli relative to a bunch of fast food for 20 years, it's not very flavorful. There's not this explosion of flavor every time. You'll be like, ew, what the hell is this? But of course, that is like just a very natural plant. That's like actual food for humans. Right? You don't really know what natural is because you've been conditioned so deeply to be very unnatural. So in a lot of cases here, it can really feel like you go against the grain of your conditioning, right? And it can be quite challenging. A lot of emotions really get stirred up. It can be quite hard. So I actually want to help you on what do you actually do here, right? So I want to help you with this process, right? So what does the process of really like healing this look like? So you actually need to process the emotions related to your specific situation, because there's a lot of underlying repressed emotions and energies stored in the body that perpetuate themselves and want to actually just kind of like survive into the future, right? These patterns want to perpetuate themselves. They want to like continue surviving, right? So you actually have to process the emotions related to people pleasing, the fear of being disapproved of, and instead you have to slowly over time get more grounded in yourself, right? And you have to change from this place of just grounded presence. You have to become more present in yourself, and I'll be explaining more as we go on, so just bear with me. Right, so process the emotions related to overgiving, right? And from a place of grounded presence, start changing the pattern. When you're in relationship to people, right? You have to actually start saying no. Right? You have to actually feel into your body, notice that you're actually exhausted and tense, and go rest, do something else. Right? You can't always be giving in this sort of exhausting, dysfunctional way. So there's an inner child part of you that is dependent, quote unquote, upon these patterns in order to get its needs met. Right? So basically, identify what those needs are. Like I said, learn to actually validate your own emotions, validate your own feelings. Of course, get more grounded in yourself, really feel into your own emotions, right? And learn to actually just embrace this part of you. When these emotions come up, learn to sit in pure presence with this part of you, not need to act or react to it, but just respond to it, right? Getting into your body, feeling the feeling, right? Learning to actually have compassion for your own suffering and just kind of feeling the emotions actively, right? Over time, really, this sort of healing is going to make it feel like you actually have your needs met, and you're going to be able to sit with those parts of you that are wounded, and you're not going to feel so like anxious and ungrounded trying to, get that love from that person. It's just not going to matter that much because you already just feel so safe and secure within yourself. And then what comes your way is like bonus, right? So here, self-regulation is needed. Right, so you have to actually develop the ability to regulate yourself, which I'll be telling you how very shortly in the form of a bunch of habits and actual kind of things to do. Right, and you actually want to develop co-regulation. Basically, co-regulation is when you regulate in relation to other people. And you want to interact with people who are capable of co-regulating. Right, rather than people who are like completely needy for you so that you're always, they're overly, clinging on to you. They need you to feel regulated whatsoever, right? You want to interact with people who are capable of self-regulating and co-regulating. These are some of the more healthier people to be in relationship to. Another really important point is to actually get out of codependent energy, right? So bring presence into yourself and the entire situation and learn how to act from a place of being grounded, safe, and secure within yourself, rather than reacting to your own feelings of insecurity, reacting to your own thoughts, reacting to the discomfort inside of you, reacting to your external situation. Because without presence, you're just reacting. You're actually kind of just acting like an animal, really. Right? You're just stuck reacting to life. It's not conscious. It's not intentional. It's none of that. Just reacting to the arising phenomena. Right? So respond consciously instead of reacting to life all the time. Right? So really learn to get out of codependent energy, right, by getting more present and shifting up the patterns as well. And there's going to be a lot of fear that comes up, right? That's why I said you actually have to process a lot of that stuff, right? This is a process. It's actually going to take time, right? You have to keep in mind that we're focusing on your long-term development as a human here. This isn't a 5-minute solution whatsoever. For a lot of people, this stuff will literally take years, right? And be honest if you're kind of just in like codependent energy in your connections with other people in a very codependent situation. It doesn't mean that you have to like leave a person forever, but it's like the overall context of the situation has to be moving away from just being like codependent and being able to self-regulate and co-regulate. The overall context of the situation has to be you becoming the primary caretaker of your own inner child, of your own wounds, right? And the people you're in relationship to, especially if it's like an intimate partner, they're the secondary caretaker and they're capable of being in that energy, right? Not all the time, absolutely every second of the day, right? Because then it becomes codependent, right? But they're capable of like being that when it's really needed, right? And relatively consistently, right? So getting out of just pure codependence. So I actually want to give you a bunch of habits now to really start doing basically every day of your life so that your development can really occur, right? Because everyone is really supposed to develop to this place of just like self-regulation and a sense of autonomy, right? Self-actualization, and then eventually self-transcendence, right? But along the way, we get certain wounds and traumas and beliefs and things that prevent us from becoming a fully self-actualized person, and eventually even just transcend the self entirely, right? And we have to identify what a lot of those blocks are and allow us to continue developing. So we have to ask what prevented us from moving forward at some point in our life? What prevented us from being able to self-regulate? What prevented us from being able to co-regulate? What stopped our development, right? And we don't have to really overanalyze on like exactly what, right? I kind of want to rephrase that, right? It's not like you have to go in and like, this happened to me when I was 8 years old, and you know, like things like that are okay. But it's more so like, how do we continue along the path of long-term development, right? So you don't need to like overanalyze the situation, right? So watch out for being just like overly analytical. This actually doesn't help you very much. So when you do a bunch of these habits, it's going to really start to feel like your needs are being met, because certain emotional needs and self-connection needs actually are going to be met by doing a lot of these things. And I want you to think of every single habit that I give you on this list as something to actually practice. So the first one is just meditating, right? And really daily meditation, right? And then when that wounded part of you comes up, that's like overgiving, codependent, things like this, very needy, wanting something, right? You can just sit with that part of you in full presence, rather than like needing to start projecting your unmet needs onto some external thing and then like chasing. That's what's really going on here. You project the unmet need, you project your own suffering, and you chase in order to alleviate yourself of that suffering, but it's this like this dog chasing its own tail, right? So basically this heals the mommy and daddy wounds of wanting their approval and validation, then acting out of fearful strategies to get their approval. This over time is extremely important. Another important point is deep breathing rather than shallow breathing. Breathing deep into your gut rather than shallow and into your upper chest. Because when you breathe deep, right, this is a regulating force. You actually start regulating the flow of energy in your body. You start to get more grounded. Breathing exercises are also really good, especially when that part arises in you that's like anxious and needy and codependent and overgives. Really breathing deep into your gut in the midst of your own reactivity. It's really needed. Another one is learn to value your own needs. Learn to actually start identifying your own needs, right? And actually value them. Actually just care about them. Because when you're able to get your own needs met, you can actually help other people in a even healthier way. The second your own needs are met, right, and you're healthy, you're stable, you're grounded, your ability to provide value to others actually increases. So you need healthy selfishness in order to have healthy selflessness. Another core point is learn to respond instead of react. When people say things or have reactions, don't get lost in it, right? Learn to get grounded in the midst of like chaotic emotion, right? Learn to actually bring presence into the most chaotic and unstable of situations and act from really your core values, from your higher self, from just being conscious and present, right? This doesn't mean repressing what's going on. This means fully embodying what's going on and feeling it. It just means not getting lost in the sauce of it, right? A good example of this is like, let's say you're a dad. Your daughter walks up to you and says, "You're the worst father ever," right? It's not a personal attack from, let's say your 7-year-old daughter, right? It's not like really a personal attack. Really, she's suffering in that moment, right? A better way to respond to that is like, "Oh, what seems to be the matter, sweetie?" Right? Like, is everything okay? Right? And having an open-hearted response to that, having an open-hearted response to the other person's closure, right? Because there's a mirroring going on. Usually when one person gets reactive, the other person gets reactive, and vice versa. So when one person reacts and they're closed and they're being unconscious, you can use that to actually become conscious and then bring awareness into the situation, right? And actually begin to help them to open up. So your own openness and consciousness is contagious just by being in the presence, just by interacting with people. Right? The depth of your consciousness and your energy gets transmitted just through interaction. So respond instead of react to yourself, to other people, etc. situations. Set and maintain boundaries, right? Learn what your own needs are, learn how to identify them, value them, and actually just maintain the boundaries there so that you can be well, right? Really care about your health. Another good one is just practice saying no. This goes into saying, maintaining boundaries. Actually just practice saying no, not feeling guilty about it, right? People will try and make you feel guilty if you're not like helping them or doing something that they want, right? And this is actually just a manipulation tactic that people have, right? They'll use guilt to try and control you. So you have to process your people-pleasing part and the fear of disapproval and learn how to bring awareness into your own being, right? And process the guilt that's stored inside of you and just say no, right? So you have to be grounded inside of yourself rather than projecting all your attention and energy outward, trying to get approval and love and validation, right? You have to learn how to heal the inner child parts, through meditation, breath work, and all the stuff, all the habits that I'm giving you on this list, right? And start acting from there, right? So you really want to think of everything on this list like a practice, something you got to return to over and over and over and over again. Not something that like you'll wake up and you'll be the best at, but something to return to, really. Another good one is learn psychology and psychotherapy. Really, you have a very complicated mind. Most people never learn psychology. They don't know anything about it whatsoever. Read some psychology books. I got a free book list. I help people all the time in my one-to-one coaching, right? Find the value that you need. Actually buy the books, right? Like you'll have to spend time, attention, energy, resources on your own development, right? Do meditation retreats, right? Actually care about your own development. Another good one is just develop integrity. Right? All this kind of goes together. Everything on this list is connecting you to yourself and allowing you to be more firm and grounded in yourself when it comes to your own well-being and not letting other things sabotage that, right? And people, in external circumstances aren't going to sabotage it just because like they're horrible, manipulative, evil people, right? Every time, of course, like narcissists and stuff can do that. But people will do it, just because you let them as well. Because if you continuously let them, they'll think it's okay. And a lot of it can actually be very innocent. It's because you don't speak up. You're not grounded in yourself. You're just like subtly wanting approval, love. You don't want to disapprove. You don't want the disapproval. Right? You don't want to be judged. Right? So it's not always because people are like evil, manipulative monsters. It's just even because they just don't know. And a lot of times this is really what it is. You just don't communicate your needs. You're just pushed around because you let people do this. And if you let people do it over and over and over again, they're going to assume it's okay because you keep letting them. So learn to speak your truth, right? Instead of saying things just to agree with others and avoid conflict, learn to really say what's genuinely on your mind, and not in an attacking way, but in a grounded, stable, present way. Not in a way that just hurts other people, right? It's like a slingshot into another person. Like, no, just saying what's on your mind in like an honest, open, transparent, and just, just loving way as well, right? You don't have to turn this into some kind of power struggle, status game, fight, none of that. None of that actually helps here. Another good one is to learn to be okay with conflict, right? Learn to be okay with disagreement, learn to be okay with disapproval. People will not always approve of you, right? And you need to just learn to live with that. You have to be able to embrace the stings that come with being disapproved of, and over time, right? The sting just doesn't hurt anymore because you processed all your fears and your avoidance to it. What actually hurts is just how you're afraid and you avoid. It's the fact that you shrink and you just like run. This is the actual problem. The disapproval doesn't really matter. It actually doesn't once you're grounded in yourself. I promise. Once you get to the point of just being very stable and grounded in yourself, it just doesn't matter as much. Right? It ceases to really matter. Your own well-being, your own values, your own vision for your life, your own alignment, this stuff just matters more. Right? So really just don't agree with people and don't agree to things just for the sake of getting approval and just avoiding disapproval. Right? And you do this by doing a lot of the things I was previously telling you. Learn to sit with those people-pleasing parts. Sit with them, be in full presence with them. Practice meditation, breath work, meditation retreats, learn psychotherapy, right? Get help, get the help that you need, right? Next, very important point. This is an integral point right here. Take good care of the body. You will not be able to do anything on this list properly if your body is just broken, sick, dying, anything like that. So exercise, stretch, have a good diet, yoga, things like this, right? Go for a walk, go for a run, lift some weights, eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, cut out junk food, right? No more fast food, no more chips and pop or soda, whatever you want to call it, and donuts and all this stuff. Lots of fruits and veggies, right? Not eating because you're bored and eating for distraction and eating for escapism, eating for nutrition and nutrition only, right? Trying to maximize your habit of eating for nutrition and minimize your habit of eating to escape. Next is time in nature. Time in nature has this like rejuvenating effect on the human body, human mind. Spend a lot of time in nature. Just expose yourself to it. Just be in the energy of nature. It's healing. Another good important point that I actually don't really have here, just came to mind, is organize your physical environment. When you have a clean physical environment, it organizes your mind as well. Organizing your environment has this organizing effect on your mind. You want to be as clear and sharp and lucid as possible. Next is do what makes you feel alive and energized, right? Work that you love, creative expression, right? Don't do things that just suck your energy over and over and over and over again. Do things in the world that you love, like reading, writing, creative expression, hanging out with people who you really like to hang out with, who are healthy to hang out with, spending the necessary time in solitude. If the thing is sucking your energy, you have to start cutting it out, which brings me into my next point. Cut out distractions that suck your energy. So mindless scrolling and phone addiction, all really good. Junk food, things like this, right? Replace them with things that give you energy. Reading, journaling, healthy food, fruits and vegetables, things like this. If the thing that you're always engaging with, right, the thing or person that you're always engaging with is always sucking your energy, right, cut it out. You're going to have to separate yourself from it. You're going to have to draw a kind of boundary with that thing, or else you're going to be stuck in this cycle of just being drained and being drained and being drained. And you're not really going to know what it's like to just feel well, feel rested in your own being. Right? That's it for this video. If you guys want to work with me, you can apply to work with me one-to-one. Link is in the pinned comment and the description. Take it easy.